Across the country, it's estimated that about 3,000 babies a year are born with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, FASD, according to Health Canada. Some of them aren't diagnosed until later in life, including Kyla, a 17-year-old high school student in Ottawa who didn't get a diagnosis until about a year ago. She'll be sharing some of her experiences tomorrow as part of a virtual symposium on FASD around what the pandemic has been like for her and where she finds support.
To be honest with you, I miss being in class because I like being with the teacher, because the teacher can actually give me one-on-one help. I worry more about this coming term because I have English, and English is not my best subject. It's actually one of my harder ones, and it's hard for me to do, and having to do that online is going to be a struggle for me. So I am in an FASD support group. It really helps me because I get to be with people who are like me, who can't learn at the same pace, but we all understand what we all struggle with, because we all struggle with this. We mostly struggle with the same things, and talking about, just life, like life. And there's just such nice people to be around. And I wish we could do it in person because they're just amazing people and they just understand.
That's Kyla. The CBC has agreed to use only her first name due to the stigma that still exists around FASD. She'll be part of a panel conversation happening at a virtual symposium tomorrow, put on by the local organization Able2. And Dan Dubovsky is one of the keynote speakers. He's a social worker who's been working in the field of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder for more than 20 years and learned a lot from his own son, Bill, who lived with FASD. We've reached Dan in Philadelphia. Good morning.
Good morning.
So
nice to speak with you.
Well, we're so appreciative of you joining us. You heard Kyla speaking there. Did what she have to say resonate with what you heard over the years from your own son?
Oh, absolutely. The struggles, and mostly it's the struggles of not being recognized as having FASD, and then people thinking that you're just lazy, you're not trying hard enough. When my son went to middle school, he came home one day and he said, "Dad, every day I walk into school, I feel stupid." And that's a terrible feeling to have. But the teacher's not recognizing it, and this goes back a number of years. It's a little bit better now, but still, because if somebody like Kyla can talk well and seems to have it together, then everybody assumes that when they don't do what they're supposed to, it's just because they're lazy and not trying hard enough. And that's not at all the case in FASD. So that's absolutely, I've heard it from my son over the years. I've seen it from others over the years too. Right. That struggle.
Dan, how much did you know about FASD before Bill was diagnosed?
Well, I knew very little at the beginning, and it was really only two things that got me kind of on track. And one was a neurologist who did a neurological exam when he was 7 and asked me if he drinks. And when I said no, I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, because his reflexes are uneven, and that's often indicative of drug or alcohol use in an individual or their parents." And then when he was almost 15 years old, the book The Broken Cord by Michael Doris came out, which was the first popular book on fetal alcohol syndrome. And I read the book, and everything in the book was exactly the things that his son got into were exactly the issues that Bill was having, and his behaviors that had been labeled as being, non-compliant and unmotivated and uncooperative began to make sense. So it was really at that point that I began to learn more about it, because when he was 7 years old, that was 1982, and there was very little I could find out about it. But even after that, and he wasn't diagnosed till he was 19 years old, which meant that he failed in every system until 19. And even after that, being a social worker, I would do trainings for every program he was involved in, and they would still not get it.
So he wasn't
They would
diagnosed.
still think that his behavior was just purposeful.
He wasn't diagnosed until he was 19.
Yep.
Once he was diagnosed, how did that change the way you interacted with him, if at all?
It did change the way, it definitely changed the way, I interacted with him, because I realized that I couldn't give him like 3 instructions. I couldn't say to him, go upstairs, brush your teeth, get in your pajamas, get ready for bed, because his brain didn't work that way, not because he didn't want to do it. Before that, I thought, when I went upstairs and he was playing, that he didn't want to get ready for bed, and that wasn't the case at all. It's that the brain in FASD often can't take in kind of more than one direction at once, because this part of the brain that's responsible for what's called the working memory is impaired. So it helped me understand his behaviors, that they weren't just annoying, uncooperative behaviors.
Right.
An oppositional behavior, yep.
You said that...
And he was diagnosed with an oppositional disorder.
Prior to that?
Yes.
Yeah. So you said things are starting to get better, but why does it still often take years for a diagnosis of FASD?
Well, because the number of diagnostic centers that we have really around the world is just minuscule compared to what we believe the prevalence of FASD is. And it's so often not recognized. So we don't have enough diagnostic capacity to get people recognized. And the earlier they're recognized, the better. So often they go through a lot of life. Like Caitlin said, most of their life without, at least their early life, with thinking that maybe they're just bad, or they're just, in their words, stupid, because those are the things that they've told me, Bill and others, because they don't get it and they have more difficulty. And it's so important to diagnose them so we can help them understand that it's not that they are, in their words, stupid or bad. It's that their brain works differently, and that has nothing to do with how bright they are.
Dan, what's your understanding of how the pandemic has affected people with FASD and their parents as well? Yeah. It's affected them a lot, just like Kayla said. Being home all the time, not being able to interact with people personally, not being able to get that one-to-one. It's really hard to sit in front of a computer for a large period of the day is really, really tough for somebody with FASD, and be able to focus on, maybe a teacher talking on the screen, or having work to do on the screen. Very, very difficult. And for families, I think it's very difficult because the kids or the adolescents are home all day, so that they, and because they're easily distracted and, they get into things. It's like the parents have to be on them all the time, and especially if they're not recognized as having FASD, and so that they're really the parents get frustrated because they don't get a break. Yeah. Because they have to watch them all the time and be aware of what's going on and get them to do their schoolwork, all of that. So I think for both the families, it's incredibly tough, and for the youngsters, and then they don't get that support that they really need. The families don't get a break. And one of the things that I really say that's so important, especially now with the pandemic, is to find some time every single day to have fun with your kids. Do something fun, even if it's for 15 minutes. Where you can laugh together. And I think the problem is with all the focus on they have to get their schoolwork done, they have to do this, they have to do that, we lose out on that fun piece of enjoying your kids. Dan, we're going to have to hold you there, but that's a really great place to end. Some great advice. So thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Dan Dubofsky, a social worker and consultant who is the specialist on FASD for the U.S. Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for years. He's a keynote speaker tomorrow at a symposium on FASD. It's put on by the local organization Able To, which aims to help people with disabilities participate fully in the community.